This is Carlton Burgess, and you're listening to Reaching Higher. And I'm blessed today to talk to Bishop John Washington from the East Coast. How are you today?
I'm fine. Yourself?
I'm doing great. I've been doing a series on church hurt. I realized a couple of weeks ago that there are a lot of people dealing with hurt and being hurt in the church, I should say. And I wanted to get a perspective from the pastor side of the story. I'm guilty of always saying people are hurt by pastors, but there's a reality that pastors are hurt. Am I right?
Yes, that is very true.
Okay. And we have members maybe who abuse pastors or hurt pastors.
Yeah.
Would you share, maybe you've had some friends or even yourself experience this?
Yeah, I think every pastor, if you haven't experienced church hurt, then you probably haven't been pastoring too long or correctly or something. But I believe that every pastor has experienced some type of church hurt or abuse. Maybe the abuse is being just taken advantage of, where sometimes members have a tendency to feel like they can be at their every beck and call. And they will sometimes use, I've been in situations where people will try to use guilt as a weapon to get what they want. They've been maybe, especially in the areas of, let's say if someone passes or someone's sick, things of that nature, they expect you to drop what you're doing immediately and come to see about their needs. And the reality of it is, we're human just like they are, just like anybody else, and we have other things, and we may have other things that we're doing or other business things that we're taking care of, and they possibly cannot do that. But they will use things, I pay tithes, and this is what you're supposed to do,
wow.
And, things of things of that nature. Or my grandmother been part of the church for 80 years. They're used to family cars, that type of thing. And then there have been instances where, you have some members who have just, been mean. When you're doing all you can, or you have the heart for ministry and doing all you can to see the ministry through and do what you know how to do for the people, and they still don't maybe respect it or think that you should do more, or there's nothing, because pastors are really sensitive.
Okay.
If you have a shepherd's heart, you're very sensitive to your sheep.
Okay.
And so when anything goes wrong that, you think that you're doing right or trying your best to do right, that can be very, very hurtful. And members can be very, very insensitive because most of the time it's all about them. It really, and it should be to a degree, but not taking advantage of the leader's kindness or the leader's givingness, not taking, just taking advantage of them.
Amen.
We've dealt with church hurt with members leaving,
for
whatever reason. It could be for whatever reason. People don't realize that hurts sometimes, especially because you want to see those members reach their full potential, their full capacity in life, in God, in their walk. And if, you've invested a lot, you've been walking with them, they've been walking with you, sometimes that can really, really hurt. My thing is, that I try to teach leaders is you can't be in your feelings all the time.
Okay.
You'll be devastated all the time.
Wow. I have had to learn to have tough skin. I've said that before on this broadcast. If you work in church, you must have thick skin.
Well, it's not, and it's not even really working with church. I look at it from a general sense.
Okay.
From a leadership perspective.
I agree.
Everybody in leadership who has people following them. When you're dealing with people, you're dealing with human nature. So you're going to have those times when people are going to be people.
Okay.
And so you can't sometimes take things so personal because your mandate is a bigger picture.
Well, I recently you made me think of it earlier in the conversation with a friend of mine who is in ministry actually left the church that she had been a member of and very involved, because when she was sick and she had death in her family, the pastor did not visit her. And that was the end for her. Amazing.
That's unfortunate, and there could be a couple of reasons for that. I don't know. We don't know.
Right.
What people don't realize sometimes is the pastor don't even know you're sick in the hospital.
Absolutely.
You don't say anything.
Okay.
Or nobody said anything.
Well, my question.
You don't know.
My question to you is, should I approach the pastor and say, I'm leaving your church, or I'm angry because you didn't visit me, or what do I do? How should I leave, or how should I deal with that?
Well, I think we need to learn to be responsible and mature adults.
Okay.
Because what happens in the church a lot of times, and even on the jobs, we act like children.
Oh, right.
That our bosses and our leaders are mind readers, and we're not. We don't know if you don't say anything. And I think the mature thing to do is to act as an adult and have accountability and responsibility in that. If there is a problem, then you should go to them, not nasty, but go to them in a way that it would be received properly from both ends, on both perspectives, from the pastor's perspective and from that person's perspective. But actually sit down and talk about it. Say, hey, I'm really having this issue here, and I want to talk about it. Because this is bothering me. Maybe there's a good explanation. Maybe there isn't. And if there isn't, then as a responsible adult and seeking God and being prayerful about it, because we also have to be careful when leaving churches for emotional reasons.
Okay.
Or that we're leaving for the right reason. Because I tell people all the time that church that you say that you joined or say that God sent you to, you're there on an assignment. You're there for an assignment.
Amen.
And for a season and for a reason. So until really God tells you or releases you, you probably, that's when you go, So we have to be careful in that area, too, and not just jump ship just because we're mad. Because sometimes that's like a spoiled child. You'll never learn anything. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So we have to be careful as to the reason why. That's why it's important to have a conversation about things instead of assuming or instead of going through somebody else. No, you go to the source. If you have a problem, man up, woman up, and let's sit down.
I love it. It sounds so simple, but it's really better said than done. I thought of a scenario or a really great experience, and maybe you can react to this. I was in a revival. We had a guest preacher. I was a member of a church in another town, another city. And the sermon ended with the preacher asking everybody who had a beef, or or had a problem with the pastor or issue with the pastor, to come up and apologize. The line went from front to back. And I tell you, it was beautiful. The spirit was really, really high. And I think it really was a turn for the church. But before the story ended that night, the guest preacher asked the pastor to apologize to people. So he had to move around the church and say, "I'm sorry." What would you have done? What do you think of that?
I have stood up in my pulpit in one of my churches and done an open apology.
Okay.
Because you don't know maybe who you've offended sometimes. You don't know who may be holding hurt, because you don't know individually. And most people will not say or say to you or confess that you've hurt me.